Number 1. Before Excalibur ever drew its first sword, John Boorman was chasing a different kingdom, Middle-earth. In the mid-1970s, he poured his soul into adapting The Lord of the Rings, designing costumes, building miniatures, and storyboarding every mountain and shadow. But studios panicked at the scope. Too strange, too expensive, too impossible. Boorman was left with sketches, scars, and a need to finish the story somehow, so he transmuted that loss into legend. The hobbits became squires, the elves became knights, and out of Tolkien's unmade world, Arthur's was born, greener, bloodier, more myth than memory. Years later, Boorman called Excalibur the film that healed a wound. The failure of one fantasy had forged another, proof that some dreams don't die. They just change shape and draw steel. But once that sword was raised, Boorman didn't stop at a single legend. He set out to capture everyone, to forge an Arthurian world too vast for a single tale to contain. Number 2. John Boorman didn't just make Excalibur. He tried to capture the entire heartbeat of Arthurian myth. His source, Le Morte d'Arthur, stretched across 1,000 pages of battles, betrayals, and visions. But Boorman wasn't chasing accuracy. He was chasing feeling, a myth told through light, metal, and madness. He sliced centuries into fragments, blending time until dreams and history bled together. One moment, a child pulls a sword from stone. The next, a kingdom falls to ruin. Critics called it confusing. Boorman called it truth. To him, legend wasn't linear. It was a storm of memory, looping forever. What emerged was less a film than a hallucination. The forests glowed, the armor gleamed, and prophecy hung in every breath. Excalibur didn't tell Arthur's story. It summoned it, raw, fragmented, and alive, like the myth itself refusing to fit inside one frame. Number 3. The making of Excalibur was a battle worthy of its own legend. Shot across Ireland's mist-soaked hills and crumbling castles, the production was chaos from the first slate. Rain poured for weeks, armor rusted overnight, horses slipped in the mud, actors shivered beneath 60 pounds of steel, their breath fogging inside helmets as crew members yelled through the mist just to find their marks. John Boorman demanded realism. No shortcuts, no comfort, no mercy. Dawn shoots stretched into darkness. Cameras jammed from the damp. Entire scenes vanished under sudden fog. But what should have been ruin turned to revelation. The storm clouds, the exhaustion, the bruises. They bled into the film's soul. When the final cut emerged, that misery had transformed into beauty. Every drop of rain, every glint of metal, every echo in the mist felt earned. Excalibur wasn't just filmed in chaos. It was forged by it. And in that struggle, it found its mythic power. Number 4. Excalibur is the kind of madness that lingers. Shot in Ireland's dripping forests, it glows like a dream and wounds like a nightmare. Critics couldn't decide whether it was brilliance or delirium. Pauline Kael called it crazy integrity, and she was right. Every scene feels like prophecy. Knights shining like ghosts, blood gleaming like jewels, the line between divine and doomed collapsing in every swing of a sword. Boorman didn't direct a movie. He conjured a vision too wild for reason, too beautiful for order. And when the final blade caught the sun, it wasn't just a story ending. It was a world burning itself into memory. Number 6. On screen, Merlin and Morgana clash like fire and ice, a duel of power, wit, and fury. Off screen, their tension was just as real. Nicole Williamson and Helen Mirren had feuded years earlier during a turbulent stage production of Macbeth, their argument so fierce that crew members kept them apart backstage. When John Boorman cast them together in Excalibur, everyone thought he was mad. He wasn't. He was calculating. Boorman believed that friction could spark truth, that real resentment could feed the myth, and it did. Their scenes crackle with unease. Merlin's weary patience clashing against Morgana's cold defiance. Every glare, every sharp breath feels charged with something deeper than acting. By the end of filming, the hostility melted into respect. The same fire that once divided them forged unforgettable chemistry. Their feud didn't break the magic. It became it. On a set filled with armor and fog, it was their storm that made Camelot come alive. Number 7. In the legends, it's Nimue who traps Merlin and takes his magic. But Boorman had other plans. He merged myths, rewrote fates, and gave that act of betrayal to Morgana, fusing lust, jealousy, and ambition into one hypnotic spell. Helen Mirren's performance turned the scene into something primal. Not a witch stealing wisdom, but a woman seizing power. It was a bold shift that changed the story's soul. The divine became human. The sacred became carnal. Morgana didn't just inherit Merlin's sorcery. She inherited his tragedy. And in that moment, Excalibur stopped being a tale of gods and kings, and became a story of desire burning through destiny. Number 8. In Excalibur, every shade carried meaning, every hue a spell. John Boorman didn't just film in color, he spoke through it. Green marked birth and renewal, silver carried the weight of destiny, and red was temptation, blood, and ruin. When Arthur's reign began, the screen shimmered with life, sunlight breaking through emerald canopies, armor reflecting the glow of a kingdom in bloom. But the colors changed with the story. Betrayal crept in as the greens faded. faded, the silver dulled to gray, and Camelot's glory rotted into dust. By the time Arthur rode to his final battle, the film's palette had bled dry, the world pale, exhausted, as if mourning itself. Boorman didn't explain the fall of a kingdom. He made the audience feel it, one dying color at a time. When the light finally shattered on the water, it wasn't just the end of a movie. It was prophecy fulfilled in the language of decay. Hear the steel calling from the fog? If you want to return to the edge of the battlefield and watch destiny spark against iron, you can grab your own copy through the links below. DVD, Blu-ray, or even VHS if you're old school. Thanks for the support, it really means a lot. Now, let's ride back into the legend. Number 9. When swords met on the battlefield, Excalibur didn't roar, it sang. Boorman rejected the idea of a standard score, instead weaving Wagner's Tristan und Isolde and Orff's O Fortuna into Trevor Jones's original compositions. The result was operatic warfare, a soundscape that made combat feel sacred and death inevitable. Each clash became ceremony. Trumpets announced fate. Drums rolled like thunder. Choirs rose over fire and fog, turning carnage into chorus. Even love scenes swelled with tragic majesty, as if every emotion in Camelot existed only to be sung. By the final battle, Wagner's crescendo wrapped around Arthur's fall like a requiem. It wasn't just music underscoring legend, it was legend, vibrating in every strike, every scream, every heartbeat of doomed glory. Number 10. Before Excalibur could claim its myth, it had to stand somewhere ancient. Boorman found it in Ireland's Cahir Castle, a Norman fortress carved from stone and rain, still haunted by real wars. Here, he staged the battle that crowned Arthur, drenching the walls in mud, mist, and blood. The actors fought in real armor, slipping through muck as the river below roared like a witness. This wasn't movie magic. It was history lending its bones to legend. The moss on those walls had seen centuries of battle, and under Boorman's lens, it came alive again. The moat was the River Suir itself, circling the castle like time refusing to end. Visitors can still stand where Arthur knelt, hear that same water rush beneath the ramparts, and feel the air hum with memory. For one brief, rain-soaked moment in 1981, history and myth shared the same breath. Number 11. When Excalibur was first assembled, it wasn't a movie, it was a monument. John Boorman's original cut ran over 3 hours long, packed with quests, visions, and subplots that traced the full rise and fall of Camelot. But Warner Brothers balked. The studio wanted something leaner, faster, a fantasy that could fit in a single evening. Boorman was forced to cut nearly an hour of footage, trimming centuries of legend into a fever dream of images and light. Among the lost scenes was a moment of pure chivalry. Lancelot rescuing Guinevere from forest bandits, glimpsed only in an early trailer before vanishing forever. Other cuts reshaped destinies, shortened duels, and silenced side characters whose arcs were meant to echo Arthur's own. The final film feels mythic because it moves like memory, fragmented, haunted, incomplete. What audiences saw in 1981 wasn't all of Excalibur. It was what remained after Camelot itself fell to time. Number 12. Arthurian legend tells of two blades, the sword in the stone that proved Arthur's birthright, and Excalibur, the enchanted weapon gifted later by the Lady of the Lake. But John Boorman chose to merge them, forging a single sword of destiny that carried both purpose and curse. It was a radical choice that rewrote centuries of myth, collapsing prophecy and reward into one gleaming symbol of divine power. This Excalibur wasn't just a weapon, it was a mirror. It reflected every triumph, every betrayal, every drop of blood spilled to defend or defy its king. Boorman's decision gave the film its heartbeat. Instead of two stories divided by lore, there was one blade uniting them all, from stone to lake, from promise to ruin. When it finally sank beneath the waters, it wasn't just a relic returning home. It was the closing of a circle that began with a single pull of destiny. Number 13. When Excalibur wrapped, its relics didn't vanish. They slept. Morgana's silver breastplate, gleaming with serpentine curves, never went to auction or storage. Director John Boorman kept it in his home, displayed beneath Irish sunlight like a shrine to the world he'd built. Decades passed, dust gathered, but the armor never lost its glow. It remained a ghost of Camelot, a fragment of myth that refused to fade. Then Boorman made a promise. In his will, he decreed that when he was gone, Morgana's armor would return to its true owner, Dame Helen Mirren, a symbol of respect, reconciliation, and memory. Two artists forever bound by one spellbinding story. It wasn't just a costume, it was a relic, waiting to find its queen again, and when it does, it will complete a circle forged in silver and destiny. Number 14. Before they ruled galaxies or swung swords on distant battlefields, they were just young actors sweating in heavy armor. Excalibur's cast unknowingly gathered a future pantheon. Liam Neeson as the hot-blooded Gawain, Patrick Stewart as the noble Leondegrance, and Gabriel Byrne as the doomed Uther Pendragon. None of them were stars yet. They were unknowns fighting through fog, mud, and freezing Irish dawns, earning their knighthood the hard way. John Boorman treated them like apprentices of destiny, pushing them through real sword drills, dawn marches, and endless retakes until the exhaustion emotion became part of the performance. You can see it in their eyes, that mix of awe, pride, and disbelief. Years later, each would go on to command kingdoms of their own. Neeson in Kingdom of Heaven, Byrne in Vikings, Stewart in Star Trek. But before they ruled worlds, they knelt in the mud of Camelot, learning what it truly meant to serve the crown. Number 15. Before Excalibur, Ireland's film industry was barely breathing. Decades of political unrest and scarce funding had driven most productions overseas. But when John Boorman brought his Arthurian epic to Irish soil, he didn't just shoot a movie, he sparked a revival. Hundreds of local crew members, artisans, and extras filled the forests, castles, and workshops. Armor was forged in Dublin, horses came from Kildare. Every drop of mist and sunlight on screen was Irish, and suddenly the world was watching. That momentum didn't fade. Excalibur's success drew studios back to Ireland, paving the way for Braveheart, King Arthur, and the boom of Irish filmmaking that followed. For all its knights and prophecy, the film's truest magic was practical. It gave a country its cinematic heartbeat again. Camelot might have fallen on screen, but behind the camera, Ireland had just risen. Number 16. No one expected Excalibur to triumph. It was bloody, operatic, and far too strange for mainstream audiences, a fever dream of knights and madness. Yet when it premiered in 1981, word of mouth spread like wildfire. People came to see the armor that gleamed like glass, the violence that felt like ritual, and the myth that pulsed with raw emotion. Made for $11 million, it crossed $34 million worldwide, a sleeper hit born from chaos. Critics were split, but artists were stunned. At Cannes, it won the Best Artistic Contribution Award. Its cinematography drew Oscar and BAFTA nominations for capturing what critics called the glow of legend. Audiences didn't just watch Excalibur, they surrendered to it. It wasn't polished, but it was powerful. Like the sword itself, it was flawed, luminous, and unforgettable. A reminder that imperfection can still strike gold. Number 17. When Excalibur finally hit theaters, critics didn't know where to place it. Was it art or madness? A fable or a hallucination? The New York Times called it beautiful nonsense. Others called it visionary, but audiences didn't care. They left the theater dazed, haunted by silver armor glinting through fog and faces that looked carved from myth. Boorman's vision wasn't meant to be understood. It was meant to be felt. Every frame shimmered like memory. Every scene dreamt rather than directed. That's why decades later, it still defies category. Too strange for realism, too emotional for irony, Excalibur endures as something rarer, a cinematic spell. You don't explain it, you just fall under it. Number 18. Every generation of dreamers finds its own sword to draw, and for modern filmmakers, Excalibur was that blade. Directors like Guillermo del Toro, Zack Snyder, and Ridley Scott have all cited it as a creative compass. Del Toro once said it burned into my eyes forever, inspiring the gleaming myth and shadow of Pan's Labyrinth. Snyder borrowed its operatic lighting for 300 and Man of Steel, while Ridley Scott echoed its grit and grandeur in Gladiator and Kingdom of Heaven. Boorman didn't just adapt myth, he rewrote how it could look, feel, and sound. His world of fog, blood, and prophecy became the visual grammar for every modern epic that followed. You can trace Excalibur's glow in every sword drawn, every hero redeemed, every legend reborn. It wasn't just a film, it was a spell that never stopped echoing through cinema's soul.